Welcome to our deep dive into the CDC's Milestone Moments. It's a guide to child development from birth to age 5. You've probably got this guide handy because you're curious about those tiny humans in your life, right? Maybe as a new parent or caregiver. It's fascinating stuff.
Definitely.
And what I love about this guide is that it doesn't just tell you what to expect, but also why these milestones matter.
It's true. This guide is more than just a checklist. It offers a peek into the incredible transformations happening in a child's brain as they grow.
Exactly. And it's organized so cleverly,
Mm.
walking us through month by month for that whirlwind first year, then hitting those key ages like 15, 18, and 30 months, and finally by year for ages 3 to 5. So it's like we're following along on this amazing developmental adventure.
And that structure really reflects just how rapidly development unfolds, particularly in those early years. A lot happens in a short amount of time.
Okay. Let's jump right in with social and emotional development, because who doesn't melt at those first baby smiles? But as the guide points out, it's so much more than just cuteness.
You're right. Those early interactions are actually laying the groundwork for social and emotional intelligence. For example, at just 2 months old, babies start to calm down when they're spoken to or picked up. It seems simple, but that's their first experience of feeling understood and comforted. Powerful stuff.
Really makes you realize how much those early responses matter. And by 6 months, the guide says babies are already recognizing familiar faces and showing affection. It's as if they're saying, hey, I know you and I like you.
And that recognition is a building block for more complex social interactions. Around 9 months, you might see separation anxiety emerge, which can be tough for caregivers. But it's totally normal. It means they're starting to understand that you exist, even when you're not right there.
It's like their little world is expanding. Then as toddlers, they start asserting their independence. Suddenly it's all about me, do it.
Exactly. They're figuring out their own agency, testing boundaries, and developing a sense of self. And as they move into the preschool years, those playdates and social interactions become even more vital. It's where they learn to navigate those early friendships, negotiate, and yes, sometimes even share.
Now all this social and emotional development goes hand in hand with language, right? It's mind-blowing to think how babies go from those adorable coos and babbles to full-blown conversations.
It really is remarkable. And something the guide points out that I hadn't thought much about before is that language comprehension actually develops before spoken words. So even when your baby can't talk back yet, they're soaking up every word you say, every song you sing, every book you read. They're like tiny little language sponges.
That's why it's so important to keep talking to them even when they're just a few months old.
Yeah.
We're building those neural pathways
Oh,
even if we don't see the results immediately.
precisely. And those cute little sounds they make like blowing raspberries at 6 months. It might just seem like a funny noise, but they're actually experimenting with their vocal cords, getting ready for those first words. You know, I remember reading in the guide that by 12 months, many babies start to understand the meaning of no. That's a game changer. And by 18 months, many can follow simple instructions like pick up the ball without needing any gestures.
It's incredible how quickly they grasp these concepts. And then before you know it, those early words start stringing together. The guide says that by age 2, most children are using at least 2 words together. They're becoming mini communicators. And by age 3, get ready for those why questions. Their curiosity explodes as they try to understand the world around them.
Speaking of understanding the world, this brings us to cognitive development. It's amazing how much learning happens in those first few years. They go from basic object permanence to problem solving and early math skills.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it? And it's all connected to those incredible neural connections forming in their brains. The guide talks about how at 6 months old, babies learn primarily through their senses, especially by putting things in their mouths.
Yeah, I remember that part. It might be messy for us, but think of it as their way of gathering data, building those first mental models of the world. They're analyzing texture, temperature, shape. It's like their mouths are tiny little science labs.
Exactly. And by 9 months, they make a huge cognitive leap with object permanence. The understanding that things still exist even when they can't see them. That's why they love peekaboo so much.
It's like magic for them. And that understanding keeps developing. By 30 months, the guide says they understand at least one color and can follow two-step instructions. They're becoming little problem solvers.
And the key to fostering this cognitive growth is creating an environment rich with opportunities for exploration play and hands-on activities. Every time they manipulate a toy, solve a simple puzzle, or build a tower, they're strengthening those neural connections.
Now we can't talk about child development without mentioning those oh-so-adorable physical milestones. From holding their heads up to taking those first wobbly steps, running, jumping, even figuring out buttons. It's a constant source of amazement.
And it's important to remember that each of those seemingly simple actions represents a complex interplay of muscle development coordination and brain maturation.
The guide really stresses the importance of tummy time, right?
Absolutely. Tummy time is like a baby's first workout. It strengthens their neck, back, and shoulder muscles, preparing them for all those exciting milestones like rolling over, sitting up, and eventually crawling and walking.
And as they become more mobile, our job becomes creating a safe space for exploration.
Exactly. But safe doesn't have to mean boring. Think about setting up a designated play area with age-appropriate toys, soft surfaces, and interesting objects for them to explore.
So it's all about balancing safety with that natural urge to explore. And let's not forget those fine motor skills, those tiny movements of their hands and fingers. The guide highlights how those develop too, right?
Yes, the guide points out that by 12 months, most babies have mastered the pincer grasp, picking up tiny objects between their thumb and forefinger. It's like their little hands are turning into precision instruments. By 18 months, they're scribbling with crayons, and by age 3, many are using utensils to eat. It's incredible to watch those skills progress.
Absolutely. And as they grow, the guide emphasizes the importance of outdoor play and physical activity.
It's crucial for building strength coordination and overall well-being, plus it gives them a chance to burn off all that toddler energy.
Now, before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive, I want to touch on something that's often a bit daunting for parents' developmental screening. The guide mentions that the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends this at various ages, and I think it's important to talk about why.
You're right, developmental screening is essential because it can help identify any potential delays or concerns early on. It's like a checkup for development, making sure everything's on track. And here's the key message. Don't wait. Acting early can make a real difference.
The guide also makes it clear that parents know their children best. If you have any concerns, trust your instincts and talk to your child's doctor. There's no such thing as a silly question when it comes to your child's development.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And remember, there are resources available like early intervention programs that can provide support and guidance if needed.
So that wraps up part 1 of our deep dive into the CDC's Milestone Moments. We've covered a lot of ground from those first smiles to the emergence of language and those amazing physical leaps.
We've only just begun to scratch the surface. Be sure to join us for part 2, where we'll delve deeper into the practical aspects of supporting healthy development and discuss how you can create a stimulating and enriching environment for the little ones in your life.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the CDC's Milestone Moments. You know, one thing that really struck me in the first part of our conversation is how much is happening in a baby's brain during those early months and years. Like, it's just a constant symphony of neural connections being formed.
It really is. And the guide emphasizes that each milestone, even something as simple as a baby grasping a toy, offers a glimpse into those complex processes unfolding in their minds.
Right.
It's not just about the physical actions, it's about the cognitive leaps that drive those actions.
Right. And the guide points out something that's easy to overlook, that even when babies are just a few months old and seemingly doing very little, their brains are incredibly active, absorbing information about the world around them.
Like, take, for example, the way babies put everything in their mouths. Might seem messy, but the guide highlights how this is actually a crucial way for them to learn about objects, their texture, shape, temperature. It's as if their mouths are tiny little research labs.
It's like they're conducting their own scientific experiments.
Yeah.
And as they get older, that sense of exploration expands. They start interacting with their environment in new ways through play, problem solving. And those first attempts at independence.
Exactly. And that's where caregivers come in. By creating an environment that encourages exploration and provides just the right amount of support, we can nurture those budding brains and help children reach their full potential.
So let's talk about some practical ways caregivers can support healthy development during those early months. What are some key takeaways from the guide that resonated with you?
Well, first and foremost, the guide emphasizes the importance of responsive caregiving. It's about being attuned to your baby's cues, their cries, their smiles, their coos, and responding in a way that makes them feel seen, heard, and understood.
It's like we're their first conversation partners, even before they can speak.
Precisely.
Yeah.
We're building that foundation of trust and security that's so crucial for their emotional development. And beyond just responding to their cues, we can actively engage them in back-and-forth interactions, singing songs, reading books, making eye contact. These simple acts stimulate brain development and strengthen that parent-child bond.
Something else that stood out to me in the guide was the importance of tummy time.
Tummy time is essential. It's like a baby's first workout, strengthening their neck, back, and shoulder muscles, which prepares them for those later milestones of rolling over, crawling, and sitting up. Might seem like a small thing, but It makes a big difference.
And as babies become more mobile, the guide stresses the importance of creating a safe environment for exploration. But as you mentioned earlier, safe doesn't have to mean boring.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about setting up a designated play area with age-appropriate toys, soft surfaces, and interesting objects for them to explore. You want to create a space where they feel free to move, explore, and discover.
So, as babies transition into toddlers, what are some things caregivers can do to support this new stage of development? I know for many parents, the toddler years can feel like a whole new ballgame.
They certainly can. Toddlers are all about asserting their independence, testing boundaries, and figuring out their place in the world. So one thing the guide suggests is offering choices whenever possible. Instead of saying, it's time to get dressed, you could say, do you want to wear the red shirt or the blue shirt?
That's a great tip. It gives them a sense of control while still setting limits.
Exactly. And speaking of limits, toddlers thrive on routine and predictability. So establishing consistent meal times, bedtimes, and daily routines can help them feel secure and make transitions smoother. Reduces the chance of those dreaded meltdowns.
And as toddlers get a bit older and start interacting more with other children, the guide talks about the importance of playdates.
Playdates are a wonderful opportunity for toddlers to develop social skills, learn to share and navigate the dynamics of early friendships. Of course, those early playdates can be interesting to say the least. There might be some parallel play, the occasional toy snatching.
It's all part of the learning curve. And it's where caregivers can play a crucial role by modeling positive social behaviors like sharing, taking turns, and using words to express their needs.
Exactly. We're their guides in those early social interactions.
Now let's shift our focus to the preschool years, ages 3 to 5. What are some of the key developmental changes that happen during this stage, and how can caregivers best support their preschoolers?
Preschoolers are becoming increasingly independent, imaginative, and eager to engage with the world in new ways. Their language skills are flourishing, their cognitive abilities are blossoming, and they're developing a stronger sense of self.
It's like they're little sponges, soaking up knowledge and experiences at an incredible rate.
Exactly. And that's why providing a stimulating and enriching environment is so important during these years. Think about creating opportunities for creative expression through art, music, and pretend play. Reading aloud together, engaging in conversations, and exposing them to new experiences, all of these things contribute to their growth.
The guide also emphasizes the importance of encouraging preschoolers to use their words.
Yes, this age is all about developing communication and emotional regulation skills, helping them identify and label their feelings. Happy, sad, angry, frustrated. Gives them the vocabulary they need to express themselves effectively.
And what about those essential social skills? How can caregivers help preschoolers navigate those sometimes tricky social situations?
Playdates in preschool settings provide invaluable opportunities for preschoolers to practice those skills. Sharing, taking turns, cooperating, resolving conflicts. And as caregivers, we can model those positive behaviors and offer gentle guidance when needed.
So it sounds like these preschool years are a time of tremendous growth and exploration, both intellectually and socially. What are some practical tips for caregivers to support the preschoolers on this journey?
Well, first and foremost, make time for play. Play is the language of children, and it's through play that they learn and grow. Encourage both structured and unstructured play, giving them space to explore their interests and let their imaginations run wild.
I love that the guide highlights both types of play. Structured play like puzzles and board games helps develop cognitive skills and the ability to follow rules, while unstructured play fosters creativity, problem solving, and social interaction. It's about finding that balance.
Exactly. And another important tip is to establish clear rules and routines. Preschoolers thrive on predictability and consistency. Knowing what to expect helps them feel secure and makes transitions smoother.
And of course, let's not forget the power of reading together.
Reading aloud to preschoolers exposes them to rich language, expands their vocabulary, and sparks their imagination. It's a wonderful way to bond and foster a love of learning. And remember, even as they start to read on their own, continuing to read aloud together is valuable. It's a shared experience that creates lasting memories.
It sounds like the key takeaway here is that providing a loving and supportive environment, along with plenty of opportunities for exploration and play, is the best way to nurture a preschooler's development.
That's right. And remember, every child develops at their own pace. The guide is meant to be a roadmap, not a rigid set of rules.
Right. And if you ever have any concerns about your child's development, don't hesitate to talk to their doctor. They can help determine if there are any underlying issues that need to be addressed and connect you with resources if needed.
Absolutely. Early intervention is key.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive. We've explored practical strategies for supporting development from those early months through the preschool years, highlighting the importance of responsive caregiving play and creating a stimulating and enriching environment.
And we've emphasized that parents and caregivers are the experts on their own children.
Hmm.
Trust your instincts and don't hesitate to seek guidance from professionals if you have any concerns.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the CDC's Milestone Moments. We've covered so much ground exploring the incredible transformations that happen from those first few months all the way to those curious and capable 5-year-olds.
It has been quite a journey.
Yeah.
And, as we wrap up our discussion, what stands out to me is just how interconnected all these developmental domains are. It's not just about physical growth or language acquisition happening in isolation.
Right.
It's about how all those pieces weave together to create a whole complex human being.
That's such a good point. And the guide really underscores how crucial those early years are in setting the foundation for everything that comes later. Their future learning, their social emotional well-being, their overall success.
It really makes you appreciate the profound impact we have as caregivers during those formative years.
Absolutely. And it also makes you realize that there's no one-size-fits-all approach. Every child develops at their own pace, and the guide encourages us to celebrate those individual journeys.
Exactly. The milestones outlined in the guide are meant to be guideposts, not rigid benchmarks. It's important to remember that there's a wide range of what's considered typical.
Something that really resonated with me throughout our discussion was the emphasis on the power of play. It's not just about keeping kids entertained, it's about giving them the freedom to explore, experiment, and learn through hands-on experiences.
Play is the work of childhood.
Yeah.
It's how they make sense of the world, develop problem-solving skills, build social connections, and exercise their imaginations.
I love how the guide encourages caregivers to provide both structured and unstructured play opportunities. We talked about how structured play might involve things like puzzles, building blocks, or simple board games, while unstructured play gives them the space to create their own games, build forts, let their imaginations run wild.
And both types of play are essential for healthy development. Structured play helps with things like following rules, taking turns, and developing cognitive skills, while unstructured play fosters creativity, problem-solving, social interaction.
Right.
Yeah.
Another key takeaway for me was the importance of reading aloud to children even as they get older and start reading independently.
Sharing books together creates a shared experience, builds vocabulary, and exposes children to a world of ideas and possibilities.
Mm.
It's also a wonderful opportunity to cuddle up and connect, fostering that all-important parent-child bond.
And the guide emphasizes how important it is to create a loving and supportive environment where children feel safe to explore, experiment, and express themselves.
It's about providing that secure base from which they can venture out and explore the world with confidence.
And when those inevitable meltdowns happen, because let's face it, responding with empathy and patience can help children learn to regulate their emotions and develop healthy coping skills.
Absolutely. It's about teaching them that it's okay to have big feelings, but we need to find constructive ways to manage them.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, I think the biggest takeaway is this: trust your instincts as a caregiver. You know your child best. And if you ever have any concerns about their development, don't hesitate to talk to their doctor or a trusted professional.
That's such an important reminder. Early intervention is key. The sooner any potential delays or concerns are addressed, the better the outcomes for your child.
This deep dive into the CDC's Milestone Moments has given us so much to think about. From those first smiles to the emergence of language and those amazing physical leaps, we've witnessed the incredible journey of child development. And we've learned that by creating a loving and supportive environment, providing opportunities for play and exploration, and responding to their needs with empathy and understanding, we can nurture those little ones and help them reach their full potential.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring and keep celebrating those milestone moments.